Good afternoon. Again, my name is Bo Riston. I am the West Virginia National Guard Public Affairs Officer with Joint Force Headquarters here in Charleston, and responsible for the Public Affairs program for the state of West Virginia for the National Guard. Along with me here is Adjutant General Bill Crane. He'll be speaking here momentarily, and then we have our recruiters from the Air Guard and the Army Guard side of the house to go over with you advertising and things of that nature. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to our Commanding General, Major General Bill Crane.
There's nothing like going out in the morning and picking up your paper like I do every morning. It comes in a piece of plastic, and I'll tell you what I found, though, is it doesn't do a real good job about keeping the rain out like I thought it would. But still, to be able to go out and get your paper, and I'm not endorsing a particular paper. I do live in Charleston, though, so just saying. And, you know, just the smell of it, the feel of it, getting that blank ink on your hands, you know, it's just nothing better than having a cup of coffee and kicking back and reading the paper, right? And so it was a real pleasure for me to have an opportunity to come down and talk with you. You know, one of the things, there's a lot of things that we could talk about, and, you know, for me, it's a real honor to have been selected to command the National Guard. You know, the governor selected me, you know, my opinion, because I happen to run this organization. It's the best organization in West Virginia. You know, we have 6,500 incredible members that every time the governor or the country asks, we stand up and we do the mission. That's for you guys. So you know, I look at this, and they talk about the press being the fourth estate or the fourth power, okay? And I believe that. And it helps because you help us with the balance of power and anti-corruption. I mean, you are the ones that find those stories and start pulling on threads that some of us may not want you to pull on. And you continue to do that, and you dig. And the thing I like about the newspaper in particular, it's not a soundbite. You know, you get to sources, you dig deeper, and you write more detail. So I really appreciate that. And our democracy depends on an independent press. It absolutely depends on it. And you're the keepers of that torch. You carry on a very important tradition. You know, without a free press, we would be Russia, or we would be China. And I personally like where I live, and I like the way our country runs. And, you know, I don't have to agree with every idea, and I won't sit here and tell you which ideas I don't agree with, because I have one job, to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Okay? So I get to take orders. I don't get to, you know, decide what's right and wrong. But you know, the hard work and dedication that you all put in, it makes a huge difference in ensuring that our democracy can continue. You know, and just because there's news out there you don't like, that doesn't make it fake news. Okay? It doesn't mean it's fake news. It just means you might not like it. You know, you are the precipice, we're on the precipice of a waterfall if you think about what technology is bringing. You know, today, somebody can record a little bit of your voice, and then they can turn around and call your parents and sound exactly like your child and ask for money. Or they can make a video that looks so real that you'd believe it's true. And so without a free press and without you all doing what you do to make sure that it's the truth, you know, we would all think that things that aren't true are true. So we need your help. You know, and I talk about this a lot. You know, I've seen the capabilities that the Chinese and the Russians have. I've seen how they use social media, and you've seen it. And when I say January 6th, you know, there was a lot of influence outside of this country that made that happen. They are more than happy to amplify and divide us. And we have to remember that and tell folks to think about things before you react to it. sometimes on social media, people think it's okay to say things you wouldn't say to each other in face to face, because somebody might punch you in the face. So sometimes we got to cool it down just a little bit and do a little better job of saying, hey, I don't think that's really true. So again, I can't tell you how much I appreciate what you do. You help me to get information out. You help me to make sure that my folks have every opportunity to get the credit they deserve for all of the hard work that they do. And I appreciate you covering those stories and helping us to let folks know about what it is that these great Americans do every day for this state, for communities, and for this country. And so with that, I'm going to open it up for any questions you might have. That's all of my preaching I'm going to do today. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Does anybody have any questions of the general?
Now, you're in here at Charleston. Are you stationed in Charleston all the time? Are you around West Virginia? Do you move through the state, or do you pretty much stay in this region in Charleston?
So my office is in Charleston, and I tell folks, I don't want to be in my office any more than they do. So I try to travel around as much as I can. Because I've got folks all over the state. I've got folks down at the border right now. I've got folks in Jordan. I'm going to go visit them next month. So I don't only travel the state, but we have two partners that we and Bo will talk about them later. Peru is one of our partners. Qatar is another partner we have through a state partnership program. So we do military to military exchanges with them, and Bo will get into that more. But so I'm all over. I just got back a couple months ago from London, Germany, and Poland. I was in Warsaw for a little while to talk to folks about an exercise we do in West Virginia. It's called the Irregular Warfare Exercise. We brought 16 different nations here to teach them how to do irregular warfare, which is the stuff that's going on in Ukraine against the Russians. So we do a lot of heavy lifting in West Virginia for such a small state and a small guard.
Stephen Adams, Ogden Newspapers, and we talk a lot about nurses and first responders and whatnot in regards to COVID, but of course in other states, but definitely in West Virginia, the National Guard played a very significant role in that. I traveled up to Camp Dawson where you all were making masks out of parachute and all the things that you all were doing. I am curious to know, a lot of those other groups I talked about, nurses, first responders, have seen a drop-off, post-COVID, burnout, things of that nature. I'm curious to know whether you all have seen, as far as your numbers of Guard members, whether you've seen a drop-off or whether staffing has remained about the same as far as recruitment and the people that you have serving with you all. Thank you.
Yeah, so currently on the air side, we're over 100% strength. And on the Army side, we're about 95% strength. And that's why these guys are here, because we are always looking for folks to come in. I get to go talk to a lot of youth through both of our challenge academies that we have, also future leaders programs and some other programs that we deal with. And I'll tell you, I always talk about the opportunities that the Guard has for them. The training, we pay $9,000 a year for tuition assistance, so that's a heck of a benefit. And then on top of it, if you join and you don't have health care, for about $50 a month, you have some pretty darn good health care. So there's a ton of benefits, and then the biggest benefit in my mind, I've been doing this almost 40 years now. If I didn't like it, I'd have left a long time ago. But it's just the camaraderie, it's the people you meet, and it just, they get a purpose. They have a purpose behind why they're doing something. And when you go help citizens, the thank yous you get from them, it warms our hearts, and we're just happy to be out there helping.
Sir, let me ask a question here. If we're looking at the slide here, and we've got the National Guard mission and vision and priorities. We've got the Army and the Air Force values, but I know you're very keen on talking about West Virginia values. Would you explain to this crowd what you tell all of the soldiers when you talk to them about West Virginia values and what that means to you?
Yeah, so, you know, like he said, the Army and Air Force, we have the values that we live by. So when I first got to be the adjutant general, I started thinking about, you know, what makes us special? Because I'll be honest with you, and I'm not talking about this, DC calls us all the time when they need help, all the time, because they know we're going to answer the call. And so I was like, what is it that makes us special? And so I did Mr. Google. Anybody heard of Mr. Google? He's a pretty smart guy, or gal, I don't know which. But anyway, I did a search for West Virginia value, and it talked in there. This thing popped up. It was like a primer, and so there was this guy. It was a minister that was sent to West Virginia, and they told him to figure out what it is that makes us West Virginians. Because I mean, I don't know about you, but I feel like I know what our values are, but here's a guy that's written a 12-page document about it. And so I asked my chaplain, hey, can you see if you can find this guy? So he lives in Georgia. So I talked to him for about 30 minutes about why he was doing this. And what it was is we're not real open to strangers. And so the purpose of him coming here was to see what it is that makes us what we are, so that, you know, they can have folks to come in and minister to us. And so when I read through those, it talks about how humble we are. And I'll tell you, I have some of the most humble people you ever meet. And some of them are multimillionaires that are wearing the uniform. And they're like NCOs in some of these units. Some of them are doctors, lawyers. I mean, just incredible Americans that still come to drill and choose to wear this uniform. So they're just real humble. That, you know, and talk about humor. You know, we like to kid each other. I joke around with the Air Force all the time because I'm an Army person. I don't know why they decided to wear our uniforms and put this brown stuff on them. But, you know, we joke with each other. And we do it out in public. We joke with each other. But when somebody outside of West Virginia wants to make a joke about us, what do? We all lock our arms and we're like, we're going to come kick your ass. Right? I mean, that's just the way we are. And so that's some of the stuff that you know, I've been all over the world. At every place I've been, if I bump into somebody, I always try to wear a West Virginia hat because I'm proud of West Virginia. I'll wear that hat, and I'll have somebody come up to me and say, you know, I grew up in West Virginia, and, you know, I wish I could come home. Think about that. They just want to come home, and I think all the stuff that's going on that the legislature's done, the governor's done to bring jobs back, I'm hoping we can bring all those folks back, because it is a absolutely great state to live in. And so those are the values that I talk about when I hand out my coin, and I tell the folks they got to share those values, and I also tell them don't scratch my damn coin because I don't want my coin getting scratched. So, but that's the kind of values that we have in West Virginia. And, you know, not everybody that's in the West Virginia National Guard is from West Virginia, but they adopt our values because they see real soon that we are absolutely a family, and we want to take care of each other. And I think that's what we see in West Virginia. It's a lot of families and folks trying to help each other out in our communities and take care of one another. Thanks for that question, Bo.
Absolutely.
What training prepared you for that you were, as soon as it happened, ready to get it done? But then what do you see coming next that the Guard's going to be ready for and we don't even know it's happening?
Yeah, so what makes us ready, in my mind, is the fact that we're not just guardsmen. You know, I was a research chemist for years before I became, while I was a soldier. So I have chemists, I have all walks of life in the ranks. I mean, we had a major that worked up in Morgantown that was the worldwide distribution manager. And so he knew how to do distribution. And so we bring all those talents in, and then we can train people up pretty darn quick. And what we're extraordinarily good at is non-standard logistics. We will always be able to move stuff, move people, because that's just what we have to do all the time anyway. And what do I see coming? You know, I ask folks all the time to think about critical infrastructure. We have tremendous vulnerabilities across the country in critical infrastructure. You know, people can reach out and touch things, as you saw with the pipeline, the Colonial Pipeline incident. People can touch our critical infrastructure, and our adversaries can do that. And if they shut those things down, you know, I worry about them shutting our electric off. Imagine New York City, and they've shut the electric off for a week. Just think about what that means. It's going to be a tremendous challenge. And so we've got to make sure that we're doing everything we can to shore up our grid, to shore up, and you know, another thing our adversaries can do, they can actually, so all of our time, everything that runs our phones, our banking, everything, all of our time comes off of the Global Positioning System, the GPS, which is a satellite-based system that feeds time. Our adversaries today can block time, can block the GPS signal, and they can shift time. If your phone and my phone if time isn't the same, they won't talk to each other. It's a timing problem. The packets of information will bang into each other. Okay, your banking won't work. It will shut everything down. So West Virginia, we're very fortunate. We have one of 7 systems. It's called Nitro. It's a Terra-based backup for time. I've been working with the legislature. I actually went and briefed the National Security Council on it. We're trying to get this system fielded across the entire country. It's about a $330 million bill. But imagine how much more it will cost if we don't put something out there that gives us the backup time. Okay, so those are the things I worry about. And then the next thing is, you know, I need to have full ranks. I have to have full readiness, because if our adversaries see us as being weak, they feel that they can do something. And we don't want them thinking it's okay to do whatever it is they might do. Okay, so those are the kind of things that kind of keep me up at night.
Last question, and we got to move on after this.
Hi, how are you? I'm Deborah Fernselm with HD Media. My question is, are you unique in the Guard of the United States? Meaning, does West Virginia stand out because of your leadership and philosophies and values and out-of-the-box training comparison to other National Guard units?
What I really think it is it's the young folks bringing ideas, us being willing to listen to these ideas, and it's just the family mentality that we have in the Guard, and we do everything we can to take care of one another over and over and over again. And so I think what makes it special is exactly what I talked about. I think it's our values. I think it's what my parents taught me, what my teachers taught me, and what our teachers are teaching them now, and what their parents are teaching. So I think we continue to have the values that allow us to have an organization that we're watching each other's back. We're trying to make sure that we're not perfect. I'll never ever say we're perfect. There are things we still need to fix and take care of. We still have issues within our ranks. But generally speaking, about 99% everybody's doing the right thing. And so that's what makes it really special. And nobody's sitting back going, hey, I need to wait for somebody to tell me what to do every day. If I had to tell my recruiters every day, hey, here's what I want you to do today, go get to work, it's a waste of my time, it's a waste of their time to sit around and wait for me to do that. They just get up and do the job every day. And that's what makes them different and special in my mind.
Let me segue into my presentation then, and also say that what he was speaking about holds true for many in the Guard, including myself. I'm a West Virginia native. I was born and raised in Palestine, West Virginia, just over the hill from Jessica Lynch. And went to Worth County High School, graduated, went into the Navy, spent 5 years active duty Navy, and I've been bouncing all over the place ever since. In 2018, I had the opportunity to come back to West Virginia to hire on as a civilian with the Guard, and was just blown away. Now, I have, in my family history, I had a uncle that I'm actually named after who was in the Guard, retired from the Guard. He was in the 1092nd out of Parkersburg engineer group. And so I knew the Guard was there. I never had any idea of how much the National Guard actually does. What all the Guard touches within our state. So that's what this presentation is really kind of geared towards, is giving you all a better understanding and appreciation of what all the Guard does and the diversity of the mission sets and the activities and the impacts that we have within the state of West Virginia. Much like I didn't know, most folks don't, and so that's what we're here for. So we started with our mission, visions, and priorities, and we talked about the values and things. Next slide, sir. So getting a little bit of the structure. You met our TAG, Major General Crane. We also have Brigadier General Holt, Brigadier General Cochran, Cadle, and then Chief Warrant Officer 5, Dan Hutchins. Those are our senior officer ranks for the state. Then at the bottom, we have our senior enlisted, which is Command Sergeant Major and senior enlisted leader for the state, Dusty Jones. And then the Army Command Sergeant Major, Chad Moneypenny, and the Air State Command Chief, is that it? Command Chief? Mr. Ives. So that's our top leadership. Next slide, please. Of course, our top leadership is the governor. The Guard is a very unique institution, as in fact, we are a United States military. We belong to the DoD, but primarily we are a state asset, and therefore under civilian control by the governor of the state. When we do state active duty, SAD, we are under control of the governor. When we do a federal mission, deploy overseas or something like that, we then transfer into what's called Title 10, and we then become a part of the active force for that period of time that we're activated in things. But typically, for most state missions and things of that nature, the governor is our commander-in-chief. The adjutant general has a joint staff, and then we also have a group called the Military Authority, which is a lot of the civilian hires and positions and things like that, support elements. Military Authority helps with that and runs a lot of the programs, the special programs, which we'll get into here in a little bit. Next slide, please. Currently, right now, and I'm going to give you some updated numbers here, but based on this, we currently have, let me see my numbers here, 3,853 soldiers, 1,932 airmen, for a total of 5,785 in total force for Air Force and Army. We also then have approximately 700, I think it is, civilians that work everywhere from custodians to public affairs to you name it, that help support the organization, help support the folks in the uniforms. Next slide, please. These are all the different locations that the Guard is located at. Command headquarters, of course, here in Charleston, but another huge facility for us is Camp Dawson in Kingwood. But we have from the tippy top of the state out to Martinsburg, down to Bluefield, and out to Point Pleasant. We are everywhere, and we're in almost every community. It's almost a guarantee that with the number of folks that we have working for the organization, that every single one of your communities has Guard members, active Guard members in your communities. Next slide, please. Here's one of the things that you don't hear a lot about. Direct and indirect economic impact. Every single year, Guard activities bring in roughly $370 million of direct economic impact. When we take in indirect functionalities as well, that's over 500,000. So $500 million of revenue coming into the state. For every dollar that the state spends on the Guard, we receive in 2021 $16 in federal funding. That number actually went up last year to 20 to 1, so it's a 20 to 1 ratio. So very, very, very big bang for the buck in regards to what we cost the state versus how much we contribute to the state economy. Next slide, please. Operations at home and abroad. We talked about COVID a little bit, and the Guard was integral in supporting a comprehensive pandemic response. At the same time, while we were providing response efforts all around the state, we were also maintaining our forces worldwide and deploying and providing for that federal mission as well. We continue to support the global war on terrorism, and we participate in numerous training exercises every single year all across the globe. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. In Afghanistan, as an example, we were very integral in some of the earliest missions in Afghanistan, and we actually helped fly out refugees on the very last missions out of Afghanistan as well. Operations Allied Support, I think it was. And we'll talk about this in a minute. The 130th Air Wing is upgraded to the 130J, which is the latest model of aircraft for the C-130 Super Hercules. And that will provide a lot more capabilities for us and puts us at the forefront nationally with the units that have received those aircraft, and will put us in a position to grow and maintain for decades to come. Next slide, please. Overseas deployments and exercises. We currently have 50-plus members deployed overseas. General talked about that for a moment. He's going to go visit them here next month. We have 3 units scheduled to deploy in 2024. More than 250 deployed last year, working with NATO and allied forces and all around the world. Some of the exercises and things that we participate in include Operations Allies Welcome, which was, that's the name of it, Allies Welcome, which was the evacuation of refugees out of Afghanistan. We have other exercises such as Swift Response, Air Defender 22, Air Defender 23, which Air Defender 23 just wrapped up. It was the largest ever mobility exercise, air mobility exercise in the world that happened over in Europe. Cold Response up north, Noble Partner in the Republic of Georgia, Resolute Sentinel in Guatemala, and Peru in South America, Agile Rage, and we also participated in the D-Day observance this past year, flying aircraft in formation over Normandy to commemorate D-Day. Currently, we have 54 volunteers on state active duty orders participating in Operation Lone Star at the southern border. We have 390 service members currently serving in the Department of Corrections in the prisons. Other things that we got going right now and continue to operate with, we have COVID. We actually just 2 days ago, on the 9th, I believe it was, our final COVID orders sets ended. So we've had folks on COVID orders up until August. And some folks are like, huh? COVID's been gone for a long time as far as our active response, but it's all the back end work of taking care of all the inventory stock, making sure all the grant cycles and things with Emergency Management Division and FEMA and things of that nature are taken care of, the nuts and bolts, the crossing the T's and dotting the I's, those type of things. We've had 10 people still working on that, and that just closed out. We help with election security here in West Virginia. We're also very much engaged in cyber security, as the general alluded to, with exercises called Lock Shields and Cyber Shield. We have, last year, we participated in the New River Gorge aerial firefighting. There was a wildfire in the New River Gorge. We were able to fly our aircraft and drop water onto the fires to help suppress that fire. We helped in the Kentucky aerial flooding rescues, rescued 22 folks from rooftops and isolated areas that were flooded in. And then we want to talk a little bit about Ridge Runner. The general alluded to our exercise that brought 16 different nations here, all throughout the Baltic states and things of that nature. It's a large-scale exercise that happened here this past summer. It went all the way from Morgantown in the north to Bluefield in the south and to Point Pleasant. We had roughly 450 Special Forces folks and Special Forces and regular forces folks from 16 different nations here operating in West Virginia, and I bet you didn't hear hardly anything about that. That was very, very quiet because that's the type of mission that they're working towards. So very much international engagement and things of that nature. Next slide, please. So One of the big things that the Guard does, of course, as you know, domestic operations. This is the Bambi bucket, dropping water from our helicopters. So this is what I was talking to with the firefighting efforts in the New River Gorge. We've also deployed numerous times over the past couple of years to California and places out west to help them during their major wildland firefighting efforts. When any type of disaster or emergency happens, we can go into help local emergency managers, help them plus up their staffs and provide logistical support and operational support to local emergency managers when they're dealing with floods or storms or anything else like that, such as the big winter storm that happened a couple years ago. This was in Mason County. They just got slammed. There was a whole area that was just devastated. And we went in and helped clear trees and restore power and things of that nature. This is a sample of doing swiftwater rescue operations up in the Cheat River, where they actually fly down close to the river and lift and hoist folks up that rescued. This would be a sample of what they were doing in Kentucky during their rescue operations. And then, of course, we talked about COVID. Everything COVID, from PPE distribution to actual handling of the vaccines, inventory management of the vaccines, distribution of the vaccines statewide, clinics for testing, mobile clinics for testing, as well as for the vaccine administration itself. We were everywhere. In nursing homes, doing testing there. We also were instrumental in inventing some technologies to help sanitize and clean first responder vehicles, ambulances, and things like that, so that those would be able to be used again after COVID patients were in them. Next slide. Okay, so in addition to our domestic, we have a number of specialized organizations within the state through what is called AIDIC, or the Army Integrated Training and Education Center. That includes our SIP battalion, our Sea Bernie folks, CST, SURF-P, and our Swiftwater Rescue. These folks do just a plethora of things. They provide support for West Virginia football games and other large-scale events, such as Bridge Day and things of that nature. They operate in the background. You don't see them, but they're there in case of an emergency, in case of any type of chemical, biological attack, or anything of that nature. They're there in the background supporting local emergency managers, local law enforcement, to make sure that we're safe and protected. The SIP battalion, the general talked about critical infrastructure. Our SIP battalion actually goes around the nation and does critical infrastructure assessments for both government and civilian sector partners, and gauging the security and the safety and the resiliency of critical infrastructure, from substations and everything to cyber, you name it. The SIP battalion does that. That's all based right here out of West Virginia.
Thank you.